Hello and welcome to Adventures in Venueland, an EVMC podcast. Join us for this all-access pass backstage and behind the scenes with some of the brightest minds that cross the scope of the live event industry. I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. We'll introduce you to incredible guests who journey with us as we dive deep into the world of venues, tours, festivals, and everything in between. Grab your laminate and meet us in Venueland.
Today's adventure takes us to Music City. We're going to talk with a guy who's worked for every letter in the alphabet, from MTV to WSJ to RCA. He's seen a little bit of everything. He's been recognized as a most admired CEO by the Nashville Business Journal, an emerging entrepreneur of the year, and he's the president of Bauer Entertainment Marketing. Please welcome Brian Bauer. How you doing, Brian?
Good, man. Great to be here.
You are long overdue for being a guest here, and we're so glad to have you. Paul and I, worked with you for many, many years as part of EVMC. But for folks who may not be familiar, because not everybody has a business that they're running named after themselves. What is Bauer Entertainment?
all the good and bad that comes with that, right? So Bauer Entertainment Marketing, we're a full service entertainment marketing firm. Very much a complement to in-house teams in the music, sports, and entertainment space. And, our mission is aligned with event producers primarily, in that we bring people together for experiences and memories. And we get the really exciting and energizing opportunity to do that for folks all around the world. It's been a wild ride, which has been really cool to kind of work in conjunction with you guys on the EVMC side, and you guys have seen that growth over the years.
The
That's
whole path,
pretty rad. Yeah, totally.
Do you all have kind of like an area that you hang your hat on? I mean, you said it's kind of like a full service, but do you consider yourselves really like strong on the digital side, or are there certain areas that you see maybe more businesses taking advantage of when it comes to your services?
I think the beat that we've been drumming for a lot of years is really rooted in conversion rate optimization, or CRO for short.
What does that mean? Let's get into
Exactly. Yep. So it's the data-driven perspective, or kind of the lens through which we look at all of our service. It's looking at that buyer journey from awareness to consideration to decision, and looking at the metrics and identifying, all right, cool, where are these ticket buyers or fans? Where are they bailing? Where are they abandoning? What's working okay, but could be great? What's not yet in place that could really help drive more sales? And so it's an approach. But ultimately, if you think about all that we do as marketers, from billboards to radio to social posts to just all of these things that are all kind of driving to one place primarily, and it's the website. And on average, we're only getting about 2% of that traffic to actually buy from them. And so if you think about what can we do to optimize that process, to make it easier to buy, fewer steps, better offerings, that kind of thing, what's one more percent in the aggregate could be millions of dollars difference.
Right.
And so that is what we really focus on. That is our approach. We kind of have that mantra: if you don't measure it, you can't market it. But it's also a standalone service. It's what we do, where we can add software to websites that serve variations of the same page. So we've got this kind of culture of testing, where, for instance, like 50% of visitors might see a buy tickets button, and the other 50% of those visitors might see a find tickets button. And we kind of see over time which one of those converts more tickets. So it's something that like retail does as just sort of a standard, and it has not fully trickled down to our space. And you think of like Amazon one-click buy. Well, hell, why can't it be that easy to buy a ticket? And it's just not. And so that's the beat or the drum that we've been beating for many, many years.
Are you seeing any sort of like challenges when you're, supporting these venues? Is there like, upper management? Are they like, I don't know what all this, just, sometimes there is that rub of people kind of thinking a little too old school. And meanwhile, the marketers are like, we need the help,
Totally.
and how do you sell them on dollars? Is that the thing that ultimately at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, you increase that traffic 1%, all of a sudden you're making millions more dollars. Is that what really pushes them over?
Totally. And that's, why we're full service as well, right? I mean, at a foundational level, you have to have great email marketing and digital advertising and social media and all these kind of core principle stuff. But if you're not doing it again, like through the lens of conversions and making it easier, you may have like the prettiest looking content in the world, but if it's not oriented towards actually turning those browsers into buyers, then you're kind of spinning your wheels. And so by showing that, we do pretty early like audits with campaigns to where we're just going to go through your checkout flow. And with each click required to buy, on average, there's a 33% drop off. And so it's like, hey guys, I don't know if you knew this or not, but like you can't even buy a ticket for this event currently. And like we find that stuff pretty regularly. And it requires kind of a third party like us to come in with that POV that is, we're just not in the weeds as much as they are, rightfully so. And, offering that additional perspective really helps. And so from the get-go, we can identify those kind of opportunities from a CRO perspective where it's like, oh yeah, I can wrap my head around that regardless of whether I'm, a coordinator or a general manager. It's just foundational to like, oh yeah, it is easier to buy a ticket when you don't require logging in and creating an account. Got it. That kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Brian, it's when we talk to you, we are very clear, that we think this is really an interesting stuff that you guys do. And like you said, it really hasn't impacted our industry in such a big way as it could. And I want to be very, very clear. Nobody's paying for this opportunity. Nobody's, making a deal. But I'm just curious from a venue perspective, which is why I really wanted to talk to you today, because my GM comes in and he's metrics, AI, and he's heard these buzzwords.
Right, the buzzwords.
What they mean. God bless him. No, and I love him, right? But couldn't AI just do all our social media posts from now on? No, that's not how it works. But again, I don't even have an intelligent answer back. I don't understand, because I know there are so many metrics that we could be tracking, right? But there's not necessarily metrics. There's not enough hours in the day to do what we got to do anyway, which is where, a company like yours could come in handy. But we don't know what we don't know. And a lot of times there's so much data out there, and the teams can really master this. A lot of times the team side have this down for their buyers. That's interesting data, but it's not actionable data, right? So what's that mean to you? And for that person who's like struggling, thinking, hey, I got nothing. I don't have enough time in the day to figure out metrics or even what I should be doing with this. So talk to me about, because I know you've worked with everybody from the Ryman to with the Lexington Center. So tell me a little bit about kind of what you can do for venues and kind of how you can provide actionable data.
I mean, I think to echo what you're saying, right, where it's a lot of our clients don't know what they don't know, and that's why they bring us on, because we have a really wide perspective. We work with venues. We work on the tour side. We work with restaurants, conferences, film, sports, like all of these things that we see what's new, efficient, and effective, and we see kind of what the industry benchmarks are. And so I think what still rings true across all of these client types and events, it is that buyer journey. And it's breaks down to some key metrics that, it's really important that we take into account each step along the way, from what the source is of our marketing and where it's driving people to the website. Okay. And now, how is that engaging, right? What are your open and click rates? How are those compared to industry averages for email marketing, right? What are your click-through rates and cost per clicks for digital advertising, right? How does that compare, right? So making sure that each source aligns with expectations for the industry standard. And then, since they're all driving to the website, all right, now what's that traffic doing on the website? And so using your Google Analytics, using free platforms like Hotjar and things like that that allow you to identify, okay, this is how engaged that traffic actually is once they arrive from that marketing, and just pinpointing each step along the way. So for instance, add to carts, right? So on average, there's about a 70% abandonment rate once somebody adds a ticket to the cart. And if we've got a client and we're seeing 90%, well, that's a red flag. And so that's an important metric that we'll report back to them and say, hey, you know what? There's something along this process, right? We could be spending a ton of money and doing a really great job of driving a lot of traffic to the site, but once they're adding to their cart, they're abandoning. And so let's dig in there. And maybe it's just added fees that are driving, people to, we're kind of spooking people, right? And that's what that metric would kind of indicate to us, is that's a potential. And we'll test things out. But going back to your question, I mean, it's kind of, we become that resource for understanding what those industry benchmarks are. And because there are only so many hours in the day, we're the ones that are available to do that analysis and take a look at the journey that consumers are going through, so that we can provide the actionable steps of saying, hey, your creative is not really engaging or resonating with folks based off of this data. Let's do an update and let's inject some urgency and scarcity, or let's incorporate some bonus offerings in there to elevate the perceived value, all that kind of stuff.
Brian, if you were to, let's say there's some dream venue that gets built 6 months from now, they hire you and you decide, I'm going to leave this business behind. They hire you as their new marketing director. Knowing what you know, what would be like your first like 3 or 4 steps that you're like, I have this experience. This is like real low-hanging fruit. What's that recommendation where someone is like coming in and like, here's the basics, guys, we need to be tracking this, and this, or we need to do this to build our email platform. We need to, put pixels up on the website day one. Like, what is your sort of like really quick, like hit list that you would be jumping in on immediately?
Yeah, no, love the question. I think before I get into kind of the foundational setup stuff, which that's extremely important, it's about the brand, and it's making sure that everybody internally is on the same page about how do we want this venue to be perceived by others. And I think that is very regularly a step that gets skipped, and it's creating kind of a codified brand guide that everybody can reference, so that people don't have their own individual perceptions of what this brand is and what the mission is and how we should be developing content and all that. It all comes back to a document that then can be shared internally and externally with other partners. So by having a brand guide, right, by having this kind of go-to document that everybody internally can reference, and then we can share with external partners, it makes sure that our brand is consistent. And consistency leads to familiarity, which leads to recognition, which leads to trust. And nobody is going to do business with anybody or buy anything without trust. And so that is the core fundamental piece that I would make sure from day one that we are investing in and getting in the right place.
I love that recommendation. And I think you're right. I think often it gets overlooked, and sometimes the priority, rightfully so, what's spinning the wheels is the dollar. And so sometimes the priority is like, how do we move these tickets? And there's not really an overall thought of how do we do this, but how do we consistently put ourselves out there across every show, whether it's a family show or a concert. And you're right in that if you're in the market with people, you're going to be selling tickets, hopefully, to the same person, but to multiple types of shows. And if you can develop that trust and that, comfort of this is us, this is what you expect when you come in the door, but also this is how you're going to find out about our events. I mean, I think that's a really important thing to note.
Well, and you touched on something super interesting, right? Where it's like, you've got a bunch of, your venue is not happening in a vacuum. There is a ton of other things happening, competing for the same dollars. And so by taking the time to invest in a brand and really make sure that it is a unique value proposition and there are differentiators, you're avoiding the commodification that can happen when there's so much supply and there are so many events. It's like, I mean, we have this conversation regularly where it's like, okay, why is this event special? Like, I think the day and age of just putting on a, Styx is playing here. It's
Right. Yeah.
like, okay, that's great, but
they're playing everywhere.
Sheboygan on
Right.
next Tuesday.
Right.
So it really matters, I think, to take that step and to really identify like, what is this unique value and how are we kind of, in air quotes, solving problems in a unique way that you're not going to find anywhere else. And it's like, what about our experience is different? People will invest in that. People will spend their money on that more than just, oh, this is just any old show.
Yeah.
Brian, when you have got your own business, it can be challenging, right? And I know a lot of people who are listening right now think, oh, you know what? I could do my own thing and start my own business and get it going. But you've been doing this for a while now. We just hit over a decade with Bauer Entertainment Marketing.
Ah,
And
that is crazy.
So, you could go back in time and tell yourself something as you're starting out. What are you telling yourself?
Invest in Tesla. No.
Right. Yeah.
Or don't.
Apple stock for the win.
Right.
Yeah, super crazy roller coaster ride, but like, I wouldn't have it any other way, honestly. And I had to go through a lot of my experiences working for others and working at the companies that I worked at and experiencing oftentimes kind of what I feel like was not a good scenario in order to define what kind of business I wanted to run. And I'll tell you, like, people are like, oh, it's so risky. It's so risky to like kind of run your and yeah, of course. But I felt like it was almost less risky to choose my own path than if my boss had a bad ham sandwich that day and decided that they were gonna can me and revamp the company. It's like you don't have that control, and it doesn't matter how great of an employee you are working, whatever. Sometimes those things just happen. And at least I wanted to be a master of those decisions, and so I felt like the juice was worth the squeeze. But I'll tell you, I mean, you mentioned a decade, and it's like it's fuzzy for me because it totally started out as a side hustle. It wasn't really truly official until about 2018 when I hired my first employees. So it was just sort of like, I had this experience of, keeping side hustle clients over many, many years of managing their social media while I was a touring musician on the road and things like that. And I just, kept on working with them until it got to the point where I was like, oh yeah, no, this is something now where it's reached a point where I need to bring on support and I need to bring on help. And I'll tell you that, the first employees were the scariest. That's you're responsible for other people's well-being and but I just kind of went back to, I want to make sure that they have an experience that perhaps I did not. I go back to my internship days. My internships were like, hey dude, can you clean out the CD shelf? And by the way, the freezer is over frozen. You need to chip out all the ice. Like, cool, enjoy your afternoon. I did not want that for my team, right? And I felt like, there's a better way to do it. I also think that, the industry is really freaking hard. It's a really hard industry. And it's also, agency life is really hard. And so I wanted to make sure that we were doing things that took care of our team, that we do like mental health mornings where everybody gets a stipend once a month and they can take off and they can go, get a massage or do yoga or whatever. We do, that's the kind of stuff that I'm just like, man, I wish I had that. And I want to make sure that we aren't the cynical companies that I worked in. I feel like cynicism is like the killer of cultures. And I think that kind of investment has really been the driver for what's helped us grow to where we're at. I mean, dude, I think we're at like 47 people now or something on the staff.
That's
just
wild.
Bananas. there are folks now that I don't engage with that work in my own company that I like on a daily basis. You know what I mean? But
Sure,
Yeah.
yeah.
like I never would have thought that we would have gotten to that point, and I really truly think that that's because we just give a damn about them. I mean, it really, it's that simple. Like, yeah, we've just been really fortunate, and the I think I'm also a really big believer in like the wins belong to the team, and kind of like the screw ups are my own. I just feel like there's some level of accountability in that and in our leadership that helps. It helps people understand that also like mistakes are gonna happen, and that's cool. Like that's if you're not screwing up, you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah.
Uh, and I think that that's something that doesn't really get widely accepted in business and in cultures, and so that's been really foundational and like I think a core thing for us. So all these little things I think add up to like that's why we've been able to grow, and the team is like we've won some like pretty cool awards and things like that, but the ones that really like get me super jazzed are like the best place to work awards, because that gets voted on by the team. And to see like some of our squad who've like maybe they were interns and then they moved on, they were a coordinator, they moved on to like some other, I mean, they're working for like major, like SeatGeek and Universal and Golden Voice and all these
That's
things.
the best,
I'm
right?
like,
Is
that's freaking
Yeah.
amazing. I love that. That's so cool. It's just it's rad to be part of their journey, and just as much as like, the growth of my own business.
What is that? I mean, you mentioned you hired the first employee in about 2018. What
Yeah,
has that last 6 years been like? I mean, we won't belabor the pandemic. We've talked about it a lot on these
sure.
episodes. We understand what happened, but it probably looked different from your side than it did from a venue side. And there may have been some cases where when venues did have such short staff, they might look to, get support from you all to fill in those gaps until they're able to get those people back. So what's that journey been like over the last, 4 or 5 years when, we've all seen, growth and then when we, the return where everything was lit on fire basically with 100,000 tours and, what's that looked like from your side?
Yeah, I mean, we had a really really bizarre, you know, I founded the company rooted in we've got our space in East Nashville, but it's pretty much a remote business, right? So we've got, I wanted the best talent, and they weren't all in Nashville. So we've got, folks all over. So from a transition work standpoint, I mean, we were already kind of doing the remote thing. I mean, I think we hosted our first live stream for a client like 2 weeks after everything really shut down. So we were pretty damn nimble about it, which was cool. But I had read about, I think it was the SARS epidemic, that companies that were just sort of like, didn't hunker down, but that were really actually more helpful than ever and really got out there with their brand and really tried to just be present, and ended up coming out the other end about 3x. And I took that to heart, and we were hosting webinars, and I was doing free consulting, and I was doing, whatever, just to kind of help people out. And I didn't care if they were going to be clients or not. I was like, this is a disastrous moment for something that I care so deeply about, and let's make this happen. And even if it was like, people that just got, furloughed or whatever, and they were like, I got this idea for a business, can we chat about it? And I was like, heck yeah, let's do it. And it was like that kind of stuff, right? And just being present, and being like, oh yeah, here's an idea how you can retain some of your sponsorship dollars, or that kind of thing. And sure enough, I mean, we saw crazy growth. I mean, it was the mix of just being present, the mix of us, supporting all the live stream stuff. And we did, we work on the recorded side. So a lot of album releases. A lot of the festival clients that we work with just kept postponing. They didn't full on cancel. So it just elongated what we were kind of doing, because nobody really knew what the hell was going on. And so we
Right.
just kept working, and there was really great talent available, and I was able to add to the team and support, folks that way. And so yeah, we ended up pretty much tripling in size in those like 2.5 years or so, which was wild, man. And all the pros and cons that come with that.
Sure.
I spent a ton of time revamping. I mean, there was an inflection point where it's like, oh yeah, cool. Like we need to think about our structure and in our procedures and how people interact with each other and how our teams are made up and all these things, right? Where it's like,
Right. Some things work when it's
oh
you
my
and a
gosh,
dozen
yeah,
people, and they're very different when you've got 30 people involved.
massively different. Yeah. So it's, and now we're flash forward in this place where like we've been doing more international work, which is really cool. And I'm exploring how can we get, team members internationally, and like what does that look like, and that's kind of like my next new challenge a little bit in terms of like how do we maintain the culture that we have if some people are working essentially overnight from us,
Yeah.
and how do I make sure that my wife doesn't murder me and my kids know who their dad is if I'm trying to do all that stuff, right?
Trying
It's
to do
crazy. It's
calls with
crazy hard.
London. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, there's no great answer, but like I'm super stoked about the challenge. Like I that energizes me. And so, it's kind of like it's always just choose your hard. And so I'm down to choose this hard. I think this gives me the opportunity to help more folks and drive our mission, which is again just bring people together for these experiences.
How do you avoid being the boss who had a bad ham sandwich, right? You talked about that guy, right? And we all have our days where we're just angry, or the challenge we have with an employee that it's great person, but they're just not good at their job, right? Because there's some people who interview really well and they get in. So there are some challenges that come to that. And I'm just wondering how, you in your current position with this company, when you're the boss and your name's on the business, how are you handling that?
Yeah. So I'll answer the first part about how do I how do I avoid being the boss of the hips. You can't. I mean, I'm human, right? Like I'm going to screw up, and hopefully not so frequently, but it's 100% going to happen, and it does happen. But I make sure that my team has the open door policy available to them, and in a variety of ways. I mean, we have even in an anonymous feedback form, we have office hours with me. We have, a whole slew of ways for our team to give feedback, but also feel comfortable about giving feedback. That's the other thing that's like really important, that they know that I feel like they would be failing me or anybody else if they saw an opportunity to improve and didn't share that with them. And that goes from an intern on up. We hammer that home. That is very much from like a day one kind of a core thing. It's like it's very important that we have the psychological safety in our culture that like, yeah, we're gonna dig in to something if we see like there was an error, or we're seeing like it's the same mistake over and over and that kind of stuff. Like that's hurting our efficiency, and that's hurting like our ability to deliver great work. And so we've got to dig into that scenario, right? We have to take a look at the processes and be sort of inquisitive, not accusatory about the situation, right? And just sort of like, be human about it. And so that's kind of how I address the thing about, yeah, I'm gonna screw up, but when I do, please call me out on it so that I can improve, because that's just really important.
There's a lot of stuff that you guys really get into the weeds on with the company. And so how did you kind of get into that? What was your entryway into really understanding analytics? Was it from the very beginning, or was there like a day that button kind of flipped?
I think that a lot of it goes back to the role that moved me to Nashville from New York City, which was working at etix. And I was ultimately agency director there for several years, and seeing how data driven ticketing was and managing that marketing firm and the interplay between the marketing and the ticketing, and seeing how the ticketing platform and from a software perspective was testing checkout flows, and looking at it from that angle was kind of a light bulb for me. And it really resonated from the standpoint of, oh gosh, yeah, like this small tweak is really truly going to, not just for the venue or the event producer, but for the ticketing company, going to be a difference of millions and millions of dollars. And so that to me was like, well, why the heck isn't everybody doing this?
Sure.
This is taking a look behind the Wizard of Oz curtain, because I was like, this is ridiculous. So that really, I think, was a game changer.
It's when you are the boss, in the computer, you get the blue screen of death on your computer. That's coming out of the budget, right? And I guess the big question is, how do you sleep at night? And I don't mean that in a bad way, but like, when you've got them people depending on you, like I worry for my family, right? You have a bad day at work, you're like, oh, something really went wrong. What am I going to do next? But you've got not just you in your life, but you've got all these other folks that are, kind of depending on your company. So what does that feel like?
Yeah. Changes daily, right? Where there are some days, and it fluctuates just based on, seasons. Like we've got a very busy summer season, for instance, and, our winter months are, somewhat slower. But I'll start with what keeps me up at night. What keeps me up at night is if for whatever reason we're not delivering exceptional work, right? If, and sometimes candidly, even if we are, and tickets aren't selling or something as we hope they would, our clients aren't winning and we're not winning. And we care, we're really, really passionate about, again, bringing people together. And so if that's not happening, then man, it kills me. That's really what keeps me up. And so because of that, I work and the team works really damn hard to avoid that feeling. And so that's why we bust our butts a lot of the time. But I also take solace in like our track record and I can confidently say that we consistently perform and deliver really great results. And at the end of the day, marketing can only take you so far, and it's a tough conversation to have, but sometimes the product market fit is not there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we can rest easy from the standpoint of that we did absolutely everything that has proven to be effective across the board elsewhere, but the data and the results are just not there for this particular event. And so, at that point, it's making sure that we're just being really great stewards and really great partners and just delivering timely, quality, empathetic service. And sometimes it's not going to work out for that particular event, but we'll regularly get rehired even if it doesn't, because of just the passion and the type of partner that we are, which again, it just speaks to like this team that we've got impresses me daily about how just badass they are, and just they love this stuff. We live, eat, and breathe it. And so I think that's part of it, right? So that helps me at least sleep a little bit. I'm just, I think our minds overall tend to think the worst, and then I try to sit with myself, like, if this were to truly happen, right? Like, is that really going to be that bad? Like I think at this point too in my career, I feel like if I have to go back and just be a touring drummer again, like I'll still be able to be okay. Like if I have to busk on the street.
Yeah, you teased us a couple times, and so there's something I didn't know about you until I started doing my research for today's episode. But yes, you were a pretty successful drummer for a while. Talk to us about that experience.
Yeah, man. No, that was like, so I'm actually a third generation drummer. Mom was a piano teacher, and now I've got my almost 7-year-old drumming, which is wild. So it's, that was something that when I was in New York, I ended up, playing in a band pretty professionally that we were touring all over and ended up playing South by Southwest, connected with Elijah Wood, the actor down there at South by, and he ended up signing us to his label, and we did a record with him, and ended up also kind of a potential deal with Jimmy Iovine at Interscope, showcase for him. The feedback was kind of like, hey, this, I don't even know how to market you guys. And it was like, because we were weird. We were kind of out there. It was very bombastic and like kind of Queen meets Zappa meets ELO meets, like yeah, it was fun. But
Zappa.
it was
I
kind
like
of
it.
the end.
Say no more.
Yeah. I mean, it was great. Like you saw just sort of the best and worst of everything when you're on tour like that. And it
I'm
gave me,
sure.
like, such a cool perspective on the industry. And I loved it. And candidly, that's, playing shows in Nashville was what made me fall in love with Nashville. And, so when that band ended and I got that opportunity to move to Nashville, I kept playing in bands. And I actually ended up playing shows with Cage the Elephant and Chris Stapleton and some really cool stuff. I would love to get back to playing more. I think that was kind of one of those things, like as a business owner and a dad and whatever, I've kind of had to sacrifice a little bit, but knowing that my kid is doing weekly drum lessons and I get to kind of jam out with him
That's
is good,
great.
is good today for me.
You mentioned the kid. Tell us about the family.
Yeah, so got two boys. So again, almost 7 and then 10-year-old boys, Dylan and Griffin, and they're amazing. I mean, that as a business owner also is super motivating. Where it's like what I put into it comes out of it and goes to them, right? And so it's allowed me to do things like financially invest in their future, right? That I never would have been able to do or had the opportunity or even thought about had I not been pursuing this path. And so that's been cool. But it's a fun juggle of travel baseball, drum lessons, piano lessons, flag football, all the things. I'm like half chauffeur, half business owner, half husband, half all these things, right? So
we kind of touched on it, from MTV to the Wall Street Journal to RCA to, a lot of the time we're at Rock House where Paul and I got to know you. You've done a lot over the years, and it would take us a whole nother episode to go through that all. But what are some of the key moments in your career that you kind of credit to making you the man that you are today?
Oh yeah, choosing between my kids, I guess, is that's like
Yeah.
it all cascades, right? Like, yeah, getting that experience in New York City, working at MTV and Universal actually in the same summer was amazing and life-changing. Kind of seeing that scale of entertainment business. One of the milestones that I don't really talk about or touch on, but the departure from Etix and while I was at Rockhouse Partners was not good, if I'm being vulnerable. I got let go with several others kind of at the same time, and it was really tumultuous time for the company, but it was something that I really poured my heart and soul into, and it felt really painful. But that pain and kind of taking that experience and turning that into the foundation for what Bauer Entertainment Marketing became, no way would I be where I'm at today had I not gone through that experience. And so I know that there are tons of our colleagues from the COVID experience and just sort of day-to-day work anyways, right, that have been through that. And it's like incredibly demoralizing and it sucks.
I hear you.
Yeah.
It sucks. But I feel as though it was meant to happen, right? And like it sets people on a journey that they ultimately it's how it's supposed to work out. And using that as, in essence, fuel to create a better scenario for myself and for others. So I would point to that as probably the real big milestone.
I know that something kind of new on the radar for you is your work with the Helping Music Foundation. Talk a little about that and why you decided to add something else to your schedule.
Yeah,
Masochism.
Yeah, we have a board meeting in a few hours, actually. But yeah, it was an opportunity. We have our space in East Nashville that is helping our music evolve, our home for short, and we've been a part of it since the ribbon cutting, and it's essentially an incubator for the music business, particularly music creators, so producers, artists, and adjacents, right? So videographers, photographers, that kind of thing, and it is such an incredible embodiment of the creative spirit of Nashville and beyond that I could not be a part of it and an advocate for it and help. And so certainly, it's natural because that's our workspace. And that's where our team gathers and that kind of stuff, and where we host our events and parties and whatever. But it's just such an incredible cause. And I just, I could not be a part of it when I was asked to be a part of it.
No small taking there. When we talk about everything you have going on, it's obviously a lot. But before we wrap things up, what trends are you seeing? Where are you seeing the most potential for growth in this industry right now?
Yeah. Well, gosh, I mean, I think currently today there's a big supply and demand issue going on with the event industry in particular. And it's the wake of COVID still. The pendulum is swinging all over the place year to year. And currently there's far too many events in terms of what people can afford to attend.
Right.
And so I think that trend-wise, the winners are going to be the ones that deliver the highest and most unique value, that are pricing themselves in alignment with that value, that are able to express why you should buy a ticket today as opposed to tomorrow, and then make it easy to buy a ticket. Those are going to be the winners. And there's just some foundational stuff there in terms of what we are offering to make it feel like, man, I would just be absolutely stupid to not go to this event. And it's got to feel like that. It's got to feel like that kind of offering to stand out in today's marketplace. So that's the big trend that I see, and the big opportunity.
I think it comes back to circle back to what you mentioned with like the brand thing is, if everyone has tons of money and they're just going and visiting and seeing events everywhere, maybe it doesn't matter as much. But then where it does is, okay, I'm only going to go to 2 concerts this year. And now I'm choosing between 3 or 4 arenas within an hour's drive, and choosing between all these different shows, which is the one that I know is like going to consistently have good food, going to be really easy to go park at, like that really matters. And just the consistency of trust there. And, I think that really, when things do get pinched, it's usually that weighs a lot more than it would during a time when it's just like, let's go wherever to see this artist, because I'm going to see 20 concerts.
100%.
Brian, before we wrap things up here today, want to hit you with our fast 5. It's 5 quick questions, just looking for your short, immediate response. First up, do you remember your very first concert?
So I think it's a tie between, I got to go to Dave Matthews Band, and I remember riding in the back of a Bronco with like a bunch of my middle school friends. That was either the first one, or it was a Metallica concert, and the parking lot, this was in like Chicago winter, parking lot completely froze over, and we couldn't leave. There were so many accidents. So we ended up sitting another 2 or 3 hours in the parking lot, and like my parents were pissed because we were so
Never again.
Yeah. So I would have to look back at which one of those happened first, but it was either of those two.
Do you have an all-time favorite concert?
Oh boy, what a question. You know what? I wouldn't, very difficult to narrow down, but one just pops in my head would be sitting pretty much front row for Jack White at the Ryman.
Oh yeah.
You get to drum with any drummer out there. Who are you doing a duet, I guess, a drum duet with?
Oh, Model My Style a lot over Chad Smith from the Chili Peppers.
Very nice. Who's got the best breakfast in Nashville?
Ooh. Loveless Cafe.
Last question for you. What's your theme song? Reality TV show cameras follow you all around, filming your life. What's the song that plays over the opening credits to the Brian Bauer Show?
Mr. Blue Sky, ELO.
Very nice. On that note, what else? Throw out some plugs there. Where can people find you? Where people can learn more about what you do there? All that good stuff.
So Bauer Entertainment Marketing, you can find our site is BauerEntertainmentMarketing.com or BauerEM.com, whichever you choose. But yeah, that's our our service site. But the thing that I'm also really pumped about that we recently launched is an educational course. So our live event marketing masterclass. So if you're interested in checking that out, it's 60 plus video modules that really answer the question, the show's booked. Now what the hell do you do?
Right.
And there really hasn't been anything centralized that maps out the event marketing lifecycle from booking the show to preparation and kind of the announcement, pre-sale, on-sale, maintenance, ramp up, show itself, afterglow, like all of these steps, right? So really, really excited that that's out in the world.
Who is that targeted to? Is that for somebody who's maybe been in marketing as a coordinator for a while, or is it somebody who's brand new to it, or just somebody who's been around for a while but wants to know, hey, do I know what I think I know?
Sure. So I think that it's anybody that is seeking more professional development. It's certainly geared towards those that don't necessarily know how to do this quite yet, right? But there are pieces in there across, all, I guess, veteran levels of event marketer. We get into things like, Ticketmaster came from codes and, leveraging like how to plan your content for event days. And
if I hire a new coordinator, is something that I should have them, consider as like, hey, this is a good kind of intro to you because we all just kind of make it up as we go along.
100%. And in fact, we built this kind of for our own training, for our own team. As we bring on new team members, this becomes part of their training. And so it's very much geared towards, this is what you need to know about the full suite. And there's, infographics and articles and, quizzes and all the kind of good stuff. And we're going to continue to add content throughout the years to elevate the value of this thing. So that's at liveeventmarketingcourse.com to check that out. And I will also share that if listeners of the podcast want to use the code AIV10, they'll get 10% off.
Special code.
There's a little bonus.
AIV10. Is that 10?
10. That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. AIV 10, AIV 10. There you go. There's your.
It's because the podcast is 10 out of 10. We know what you did there. That's what it was.
Hey, Brian, thank you so much for the time today. I really appreciate your adventure and getting to hear and learning more about kind of you and how you got things going there. It's great stories.
Thanks, guys. You're the best. I really appreciate it.
And a big thanks to everybody for listening to this episode of Adventures in Venueland. You can subscribe and find more episodes wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. We do love your 5-star reviews. It helps others find us. Until the next adventure, I'm Dave Rettelberger.
And I'm Paul Hooper. Thanks for listening, everyone. Adventures in Venueland is a side project of the Event and Venue Marketing Conference, a marketing conference that brings together diversified event and venue professionals to cultivate education, collaboration, and innovation for the growing sports and live entertainment industry. Find out more at eventvenuemarketing.com.
Audio editing and mixing by Camille Faulkner.
Design and digital advertising by Megan Ebeck.
Copywriting and publicity by Samantha Marker.
Guest booking and brand strategies by Paul Hooper.
Guest research by Dave Rettelberger.
Marketing strategies by Paul Hooper, Megan Ebeck, and Samantha Marker. Thanks for joining us. Until the next adventure.